Okay, our first speaker tonight, there are 5 of us admins in this Learn the Birds team now, and we want to welcome Oscar. Is it Oscar? Yeah, your English name, yeah, from Hong Kong as a new Learn the Birds team member. And we would love to hear about your birding from the end of last year and what you saw. So off you go, your turn.
Oh, so I start first. Okay, let
Yes, start
me
first.
share my screen.
Perfect.
Hey, thank you
Perfect.
very much. Yeah, nice to meet you all. And this is my brief introduction. I'm Oscar from Hong Kong, and I started birding since 2008. I'm 30 years old now, so it's birding spent half of my lifetime here. And for me, I'm not really professional in working in ornithology or bird biology, but I studied biology in my bachelor degree. And now I'm working as a student in Master of Social Science, something like that. So now I will share my birding experience last year because, as you may know, Hong Kong just opened the border in last year January. So it's rather late compared to other countries or other locations. So I chose one of the neighboring countries with high bird diversity, which is Vietnam. And I went there with Vietnam birding tours with Li Fu and Li Chuyan. Is also very difficult to pronounce their name. And in March, and I spent around 11 days, mainly in the Cat Tien National Park and Da Lat area, which is the south and south central Vietnam. Of course, the highlights are German peacock pheasant and the pitters, also some endemics like the Annamprinia, collared laughingfish, and Q-tier, and also the croziers. I think this may be unfamiliar to some of you because these are the Asian species, especially the Q-tier and the laughingfish, something like that. For example, I have the pictures here. This is the bar-bellied pitter. It's near endemic in Vietnam. I think it can be also found in Cambodia or somewhere in Thailand in Southeast Asia. And also the blue pitter. This is an endemic subspecies in Vietnam, and also a endemic species of the collared laughingfish, which is also an endangered species there. So I think I was quite lucky to see these species because there are not many reports during the pandemic. I heard from the guys because there are some poaching in Vietnam during the pandemic period, and the population of some laughingfish dropped rapidly. Also, I saw some mammals like the black-shank dog. I'm not so familiar. I'm familiar with the mammals and also the gibbon. This one, this one is quite cute, I think, and they call loudly. And also a girl, a cow-like big mammal. Then the next month, I went to Sulawesi with Boas and Caleb. I think they also share their trip in Learn the Birds before those two. And I went there for around 12 days. And in Sulawesi, you can see quite a big diversities of bird species. Like Mario, you can see this very special species, many owls like the Orca-belly bubuk, Cinnabar bubuk, Sulawesi scopes owl, also with hornbill, kingfisher, pitter, and of course, I think the most sought after species would be the Hylocytia because this is the monotypic family, only can be found in Sulawesi. But unfortunately, I haven't edited my photo yet, so I can't share this time. But of course, I will share later if you want. And there's a reunion with Boas and Caleb, and we drinks a lot there. And in Sulawesi, I think the birds are quite friendly. This is quite unexpected because I went to other parts in Indonesia. The birds are always quite keep a distance with you because of poaching. And you can see we can find some king quail here very close, and also the satanic nightjar. This is an endemic species there. And as you can see, this quite interesting spot because we went there in early morning, and you can see the holes here. They are the nest of Mario. Mario is this one. This is the male Mario. Also a family tag for me, and This is the female. You can see the color different. And also the ochre-bellied bubuk. And then in May, I went to Sichuan, but this is not really lucky trip for me because of the weather and also because of some other reasons. I went there for 4 days. My targets are the Sichuan partridge and the Chinese mono, but I dipped all. But however, we can see some endemic species in China, like the Ermisan leocitra, and also the pheasant, and also the silver pheasant, the lady amherst silver pheasants, and other partridge. And I haven't edited the photos as well, but I took some photo by my iPhone. And this is a silver pheasant as a lady emphasis. This is taken in the same photography hide. And before that, there should be Sichuan partridge, but we were so unlucky and we didn't see any. They just caught inside the forest. And we went to around 4,500 meters high, and the scene is really nice. And the food in Sichuan, and we're famous for hot pot. Then in my summer holiday, I went to Japan, and thanks to my friend Yan, he arranged this trip for me. And because we can go to Iwo Jima, this is very famous during the Pacific War in World War II. But now, of course, is a famous spot for seabirding. We also spent other days in Ogasawara, and namely in Hahajima and the Chichijima, the two main islands in the Ogasawara, the Bonding Islands. We took a cruise there, we do the sea watching on the deck, and we saw the white-term bonding petrels, Bannerman shearwaters. These petrel and shearwater, I think they only breed in Japan. Also the Masudara storm petrel. This is a vulnerable species, and I think it's also only breeding in Japan. And the endemic land-bird species, only the bonding white eye. I will show you the pictures later. And also one wood pigeon. If it is split, then there will be a red-headed wood pigeon. And as you can see, this is the Iwo Jima Island, where nice weather, calm sea, perfect for seabirding. And if you maybe you don't believe, this photo is a brown booby, and I took it by iPhone only. So the birds can be very close and good for photos. And this in Japanese is Hahajima meguro, namely the bonding white eye. The only endemic species on Hahajima, and it's very pretty. Just a member of the white eye family, and only can be found in Bonding Island. And this is the wood pigeon. You can see the wing here, because the population is quite small, and I think the population is also declining. And if I remember correctly, in BirdLife International Award, it is classified as critically endangered because the population is around maybe less than 250, something like that. And this can only be found in Bonin Island in Japan. And also I do some sightseeing there, and this is a very famous spot for the gray bunting in winter, the Meiji Jingu. But of course, I went in summer, but I still can find some nests of northern goshawk. And Japan is really a nice place for birding and sightseeing. Then a few months ago, I went to Highland. This is a crazy trip to my friends because my friends and I went there for just 2 days, and we mainly for targeting the true endemic species there. The Highland peacock pheasant, the Highland partridge, Highland leaf rover, and we also wanted to do some night birding for some owl species which are very difficult in China and Hong Kong, and like the bay owl and the barn owl. Barn owl is really difficult in here. So this is the general itinerary. We spent on just 21 hours birding in Highland for all the endemic species. This is the Highland peacock pheasant. In the past, I think this is very difficult species, but now there are some photography hide, and I heard there should be a new family found and some checks. So this endangered species is no longer difficult to be seen or photographed in Highland. This is another endemic species, the Highland partridge, and also the Highland leaf warbler. These fish are the endemic species in Highland Island and only can be found there if there's no split for other species. But of course, someone may say the Highland leaf bird, Highland laughing thrush, or Highland sunbird, they are still not recognized as full species in BOW or IOC, but one day they may be true endemic species. Also the barn owl and Oriental bay owl. I love this bay owl very much. And it turns out these owls are quite easy in Highland. When we went to the specific spots, we played the call and it just came. And finally, my trip in last year is Inner Mongolia. And this is a very cold trip in under -40 degrees Celsius. I spent 7 days there just for more owls, like Snowy owls, great gray owl, Euro owl, northern hawk, and little owl. Luckily, I saw them all, and turned out the Snowy owl and the great gray owl are quite easy there. And comparative is cheaper for me to go to Inner Mongolia rather than Alaska or Canada for taking the Snowy owl. And I haven't edited the photo yet again, but I tried to edit too. This is the little owl, and you can see this the habitat of the Snowy owl. We've tried to find the Snowy owl under the -40 degrees, and this is my first time to see some shops selling ice cream just outdoor because it's so cold it won't melt, and there are also some snow crafting there. And this my photos of Snowy owls. We saw around 5 individuals, 2 males and 3 females in 7 days. And thank you for giving me a chance for sharing. And if you want to listen more or chat with me more, you can also scan my Facebook and IG code, and I can of course share more about my later on. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that was great. Thanks very much. Yes.
Thank you, Oscar. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the places while you were talking, I was Googling them and looking them up because I hadn't heard of a couple of the locations. So I thought, oh my gosh, and they just look incredible.
And your photos are stunning. They're really
So
good.
good.
I just try to. I use a 400 Canon lens for these photos.
Yeah. And what camera do you use?
I'm using R3 right now, the mirrorless.
Oh,
I think it should be the top model, but my lens is the old one, the EF one, not the RF one. So I use a new camera, but with my old lens. So let's
works
see.
very well.
Yeah,
it's a good combination. I wouldn't change it. Your photos are stunning.
Yeah, thank you.
Faraz, your turn now. Let's hear about your Caribbean birding.
Thank you, Lynette. And Chonfai, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I mean, my highlight was the bay owl until I saw the ice cream being sold outside. That was amazing. I'm actually in an ice cream shop right now. Behind me, I'm doing a photography exhibition that's upstairs, the ice cream shop. So I've been eating an inordinate amount of ice cream recently. But yeah, so let me see.
I was gonna say, Faraz, I love the photos behind you. So
thank you.
Great setup.
Great. So we're all set. Okay. So thank you, everyone. And it's good to be here again after quite a long time. I have been doing quite a number of things locally, as well as 2023, I think, was the first year for a lot of us to resume travel. So I have been speaking a lot on the birds of Trinidad and Tobago. But for this ramble, I'm going to talk about the two trips that we did this year. The first one was up to the some of the Lesser Antilles Islands. So within the Caribbean chain, is separated into the Greater Antilles, which are the larger islands from Puerto Rico to Jamaica to Hispaniola, Cuba, etc., and the Lesser Antilles, which is further south and typically a lot more small and often volcanic islands. So a huge deal here is, like a big attractor is the level of endemic birds. So the Caribbean region has about 180 endemic species, and the Lesser Antilles has quite a few of those. So you'll find here some species that are endemic to the region, and some species that are endemic to specific islands. So we started off in Dominica, and we got some species like this one here. I'm starting off with a very nondescript bird, which was a new bird for me. It's a Caribbean Elenia type of flycatcher, and a lot of the birds were very similar. So we have the banana quit, and we saw like black whiskered vireo and stuff like that. But we really came for the endemic species, specifically on Dominica, the parrots, right? Because Dominica shares a lot of its endemic species with some of the neighboring islands. So you get some of the regional endemics, like the Caribbean Elenia that we just saw. But this bird, the red-necked parrot, is one of the 2 endemic species of parrots on the island. And this is by far the more common of the 2. So this one, we were up in a forest, and we went for both species. We went for the red-necked parrot as well as the imperial parrot. So the imperial parrot, Amazona imperialis, is the largest species of Amazona parrot in the world, and it's critically endangered. So the populations have been expanding, but the biggest threat, after dealing with the threat of poachers and habitat loss and so on, the biggest threat is now hurricanes. So the region gets like some of the super storms, like Hurricane Maria in 2017, which was a Category 5 hurricane, one of the strongest hurricanes on record, cut the population of imperial parrots in half. So they're kind of like now recovering, and the biggest issue for them is like this, the presence of mature trees in the rainforest. Yeah, so I would just have, just a quick announcement that I am in a public space. So if you see me look around, it maybe it's that someone else has come into the space. So yeah. So we went. A lot of people come looking for these species of parrots, right? So the redneck parrot is something that is a species that has kind of like adapted to human settlement, and so like agricultural fields, they feed on citrus and so on. But the imperial parrot is much rarer and much harder to see. So we actually stayed in the forest for hours, and we went up to this lookout, and we were just looking out onto another hillside, and we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And this here is what the hillside looked like. So this is through my camera 500mm lens. And what we started to like get habits of, finding landmarks in the hillside and saying, okay, well, we know where this particular palm tree is, or this particular bromeliad. The tree that we've seen here, there are 2 like very light colored trunks that are very next to each other, the parallel trunks. So that was the parallel trunks was another landmark, and then there's a big bromeliad by the parallel trunks. So then above the big bromeliad, there is a stick coming out of the big bromeliad right in the center of the frame. So I'm hoping that you all are seeing this. Up on that stick is an imperial parrot. It was one of 2 birds that was seen on that day after hours and hours of waiting. And I was accompanying a friend of mine, the author of The Birds of the Lesser Antilles, on a birding trip with maybe around 10 very serious birders. And we were all like there's, everyone is scanning the opposing hillside, just like looking for any sign of this imperial parrot. And then we heard it. We heard it after about 5 or 6 hours waiting. So everyone will be like, we're ready to go. once we hear it, everyone scrambles back, and everyone's like, looking again at the binoculars. I'm just looking at the hillside, right? So I'm just taking the whole scene in, because that's kind of like what I enjoy doing. I love just looking at the whole scene. And then I see these two dark birds fly, and no one else sees them. I see where one lands, and I just take a photo immediately. And I zoom into the picture, and I show the guide, and it's like, that's the Imperial. And I'm trying to show everyone where it is. So I'm going back with the parallel trunks, big bromeliad, stick coming out of the bromeliad, and there's a bird on it. But as soon as this bird landed there, it just kind of walked down the stick and then walked into the vegetation. It literally melted into the vegetation. And it was only me, as the least serious birder in the bunch, saw this critically endangered bird, and I'm assuming that everyone is not entirely pleased about that. But anyway, there were a lot of other birds to enjoy. A lot of other regional endemics, such as this green-throated carib, one of 4 hummingbirds that were endemic to the region. This is a white-tailed tropic bird. A new bird for me, but a fairly common bird throughout tropical oceans worldwide. This is a red-legged thrush, another regional endemic. I'm going to go fairly quickly through this because I have a lot to cover. I don't want to stay too long. So this is a lesser Antillean swift, and this is one of very few photographs of this species. It's not the most charismatic. There were a few different species of tremblers. Tremblers and thrashers are related to mockingbirds. That's a brown trembler. This is a pearly-eyed thrasher, and they are also endemic to the region. We also did see some North American migrants, some familiar faces to some people. For me, this chestnut-sided warbler, what we saw in Guadeloupe, a different island, was a new bird for me, but a backyard bird for some of the people that were there. This very beautiful thrush is a forest thrush, another one that's endangered, actually listed as near threatened. Again, endemic to 4 islands in the Lesser Antilles chain. This fabulous looking hummingbird is a purple-throated carib. I find purple to be a very uncommon bird, uncommon color in nature, and you can only see the purple on this bird's throat at certain times. Something else that struck me about this bird is its wing color. So most hummingbirds that we know have brown wings, very, very dull colored wings. This one is different because its wings are iridescent. This is a Martinique oriole, one of the birds that are endemic to a single island. So it's a species of oriole endemic to the volcanic island of Martinique. This one is a Lesser Antillean pewee, a type of flycatcher. It's an interesting color morph because we don't really associate flycatchers with having different color variations, but this one, the other Lesser Antillean pewees kind of like look very much like regular pewees, like eastern wood pewee, tropical pewee, and so on. But this one has this color morph is actually endemic to the island of Saint Lucia, which is and it occurs only on that island. This is another species of Amazona parrot that's endemic to the island of Saint Vincent, and it is the Saint Vincent parrot. And interestingly enough, for this, the colors on the back side of this bird, the yellow, the blue, and the green, are the national colors of Saint Vincent. Here is a Lesser Antillean flycatcher, just an illustration of how difficult these birds are to see sometimes. It's in this just to the lower left of center, if you can't see it. Another trip that we did after the Lesser Antilles was a trip to Guyana. And in Guyana, we saw a lot of birds that either were formerly on Trinidad or extirpated from Trinidad and Tobago. And I found it funny because, Trinidad and Tobago were formerly part of South America. So very much the same habitats, just just expanded. So this is a wing-barred sea eater that was formerly a resident of Tobago, but has been a victim of the cage bird trade. So this was the first photograph that I took in Guyana, still in the city, in the botanical gardens, as was this species of hawk called a roadside hawk, which is a very common species in Central and South America, and as its name implies, is typically found near to roadways. Here is a snail kite. This was a female that we saw hunting the waterways there. Guyana is also known as a land of many waters, and it did not disappoint. There was water literally everywhere. This very prehistoric bird is called a Hoatzin. It's got a lineage dating back to millions of years ago. The young of these birds are actually born with they're hatched with claws on their wings, and they use that to climb in the vegetation, because this one was taken at the banks of a river, or we were on a boat floating down this river. So the birds can't really afford to fall off, because they fall into the water, and there's like all sorts of things that can eat them there, from snakes to piranhas to caiman. This very leggy raptor is a great black hawk. It had just finished eating a small snake, and this is an immature bird that we saw. The other birds around were carib grackles, also very common in Trinidad. But again, what we were after there is some of the endemics. So Guyana, being a landlocked country, doesn't have a lot of endemic species to the country itself. Or sorry, the air conditioner is blowing on me, so I'm a bit cold. What the endemism is about in this country is really the Guyanan Shield, which is Guyana, French Guyana, and Suriname. So the three countries are sort of geologically different from the rest of South America, and as a result have a number of Guyanan Shield endemics. So one of which is this blood-colored woodpecker, and another is this white-bellied piculet, another type of woodpecker. We saw a lot of very, very interesting birds, and one of those is this black-capped Donocobius, which its closest relatives are actually old world warblers and babblers and so on, as some of you might notice the resemblance. This bird here is a point-tailed palm creeper, which is it's the only species in its genus related to wood creepers and so on, but it's not at home on branches like typical wood creepers. They love the palm fronds, and they kind of like swim through the palm leaves, and it's really, really interesting. This is a tropical royal flycatcher. The royal flycatchers have a very interesting crest that comes up over their head like a fan, and I'm sure like people who ring birds or band birds, when they hold these birds from the mist net, the birds just flare their crown and so on. They typically only do it when stressed, so this bird is not stressed, so its crown was flattened. I didn't have the heart to frighten it, so to get it to raise its crest. This wild-looking bird is a capuchin bird. It sounds very much like a cow or a distant chainsaw. It's one of the most incredible sounds I've ever heard. So if you have the time, just Google capuchin bird, like capuchin monks, capuchin bird vocalization, and you will not be disappointed, I promise you. Guyana is very, very famous for its savannas. So the Rupununi savanna is one of the biggest attractions there, and one of the birds that I really wanted to photograph is a bird that I've photographed a lot in Trinidad. It's a fork-tailed flycatcher. But the reason why I wanted to photograph it in the savanna is because its Latin name is Terrana savanna. So for a bird that is so emblematic of the savanna, I really wanted to photograph it in its home habitat, This bird is a jabiru, and you can see it. You can kind of get an idea of the habitat, the expansive habitat. The jabiru is a gigantic bird. It stands about 5 feet tall. It's got an 8-foot wingspan. And behind the savanna is some very, very interesting mountain range just about 1,000 meters elevation. So one of the targets that we had was the cock of the rock. There are two species of cock of the rock, and the one in Guyana is the Guyanan cock of the rock. And one of my friends, a fellow photographer, he's from Guyana, he gave me a challenge when we got there. He said, get a photo of a female cock of the rock, because everyone always goes after the males, right? And interestingly enough, one of the first opportunities that we had with this species was with a female. And as you can see here, she is very easy to miss, very, very dark brown, and blends into the vegetation. And of course, as soon as I emerged from behind this trunk of a tree, she flew off. So she was very flighty. But this is what we came to see. This is a male Guyanan cock of the rock, and this is actually a bird at its lek. So, well, within the lek, it's like a communal thing. So you got a few males that would be displaying. But each male has its individual court. So this guy's court is a small area on the ground that he keeps very clear of vegetation and leaves and so on. So you can see all of the leaf litter that's around in the forest. But there's just one courtyard that he keeps very clear of the leaves, and that's his pride and joy. And of course, I wanted to get a really nice photo of him against a green background. They're incredibly difficult to photograph, but I tried my best with the gear that I have, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And without further ado, I'd like to end here because I know I've been going on for quite a bit. Thank you again for the opportunity. And back to you, Lynette.
Thanks, Faraz. That was very interesting. Wow. Absolutely stunning birds that I've never ever seen before. Didn't even know they existed. Really cool.
Thank you.
And, now my turn to talk. Let's see if I can share my screen.
See it.
Okay, as I was saying, we started off in the very dry, arid area. You can see these big sociable weaver nests. They are the biggest communally built nests in the world, actually. And these nests can weigh up to a ton. And some of the massive ones can have up to 500 birds living in them. They're not only home to sociable weavers. Sometimes snakes live in the chambers, and they eat the sociable weaver eggs and chicks, but they seem to live communally with other birds as well. In this map, you can see the area where we were. It's a map of Southern Africa. You can see the different countries here, and this red circle is where we were. Extremely dry, arid Kalahari Desert in the north, and we went to actually see flowers. It wasn't actually a birding trip, but I did sneak in some birding. But we'd had a drought for 7 years in that area, and then the rains came, and I will show you. Well, we saw these sociable weaver nests, and these are pale chanting goshawks that use the top of the nest to nest in, the sociable weaver nest. So the raptors can also nest on top of them. And the bird on the right is actually eating a bird that it caught. And this area in the oval is where the beautiful flowers were. We were there in springtime. Normally, the area is very brown and drab and desert, but this is what it looked like. The area is called Namakwa-land, and you can see it's just swathes of pinks and oranges and yellows and beautiful colors, just flowers everywhere. We did more photographing of different flowers. It was more a botanical trip than a birding trip, but I did sneak in some bird photos. Here's a close-up of those flowers. And I've got a short video of a capped wheat ear with flowers around. Now these capped wheat ears, they nest underground in rodent burrows. So that one was standing at the entrance of its nest. I also found a red-capped lark with a beak full of worms, caterpillars that it was going to feed the chicks. But look at these beautiful yellow flowers around it. Okay, and then the second part of my presentation is going to be about the Cape Penduline tit nest. Where you see the red dot is where I found the nest on a farm in the southern Karoo. The southern Karoo is a bit like the Australian outback. It's very arid, not quite as arid as this northwestern part of South Africa, which is desert, but it's semi-desert as well. It's quite arid, but it's sheep farming country, and also Angora goats. They thrive in that area. Now these Cape Penduline tits, they make their nests out of sheep's wool. Now the nest that I found was made out of pure sheep's wool. I will show you the video after this. In areas where there are no sheep, these tiny little birds use fluffy seeds to make their nests with. And they tease the wool or the seeds to make it sort of like matted or like felt. And it's actually quite waterproof and weatherproof after they've teased all the wool and the other nesting material. And I was absolutely so excited to see this active nest. I have seen many of these nests before, but they haven't been active. They've been old and sort of dirty, and you can see the birds moved away long ago. But this nest was clean and new, and I knew there were birds there. And when I walked up to it, I wasn't aware there was a bird inside the nest, and I sort of tried to take photos of the nest with my macro lens to show the matting and the felt-like texture of the nest. And this bird popped out, and I felt so bad because I wasn't aware there was a bird in there. But I stepped back about 10 meters away, and I sat in my car because this nest was near the road on a farm, on a sheep farm. And I just sat there for at least 2 hours watching the comings and goings of these birds. I'm going to play a video now to show you. It's so cute how they open the entrance with their feet and how they close that tiny entrance hole with their heads. If you want to see the full video, I've edited the video that I'm going to show now. It's just like snippets of each thing, but the full video is on my YouTube channel. The channel's under Lynette Rudman. If you just type in Cape Penduline tit nest, you should find it. Okay, let me just go find the other one now. Window, the video. Okay, yeah, it is. Please tell me you can see this. Cape Penduline tits at their remarkable nest. Can you see it, Derek? Krista?
Sorry, I was talking on mute. No, we can't see it. We just see your folder.
Oh, no. Cape Penduline.
You have to open the video, pause it, and then share that window.
The remarkable nest. Okay. The Cape Penduline tit. Okay, so must I open the video and then share it?
So you have the video open now because we could hear it, but just pause it and drag the play head back to the beginning and then share it.
Remarkable nest. The Cape Penduline tit is
no, just pause it.
Second smallest bird after the grey penduline tit. Okay. Can you see it now? It's full screen on my computer.
No, you have to share it. You have to click the up arrow and then either share your full screen or share the window that you want to share.
Yeah, when you press the present now button at the bottom, Lynette, it should come up with some of the options.
Yep, there it is.
Yep, there you go. It's
Okay.
full screen.
Yeah, I think you must put your volumes up because my narration might be a bit soft. Okay, enjoy.
Cape Penduline tits at their remarkable nest. The Cape Penduline tit is southern Africa's second smallest bird, after the grey penduline tit. Yet it can build such a clever, intricate nest out of sheep's wool or plant down. In sheep farming areas, they find wool caught on thorny bushes, and they use it to construct their nests. The cozy bag-shaped nest is usually placed in the middle of a very thorny bush to deter predators. The nest is constructed by both sexes. These tiny birds construct a very intricate nest. The nest has a false entrance, so if a snake comes there, it sticks its head in the false entrance and it leads to nowhere. The real entrance is just above the false entrance and is a narrow spout. The spout closes as soon as the bird leaves or enters the nest. If the spout doesn't close properly, the bird closes it with its head or with its feet. The birds achieve this matted texture by repeatedly pulling, teasing, and jabbing the wool back into the nest wall. These cozy nests are used for successive broods and also for nighttime roosting by the whole family outside of breeding season. Timeline of feeding the chicks. The bird opens the entrance with her foot. She teases the wool to fluff it up so that it closes more easily. She closes the entrance hole. She closes the entrance hole with her head before flying off. She pushes the wall of the false cavity towards the back wall of the nest and checks that the main entrance is tightly closed. An adult with an insect for the chicks in the nest. Entering with an insect. The mate arriving and the other leaving. Closing the hole again. The nest in the southern Karoo. The adults and their helpers know the rule. If you enter to feed, you have to close the entrance. Same when you leave the nest.
Did you all see that? Can you hear that clearly?
Yep.
That's good. Okay, the next one up is Krista Rolls. We'd love to hear about your birding in the Washington state in the US.
Thanks for that, Lynette. And I always love the videos that you put together. They're so informative, and all your videography and pictures are always really wonderful. So thank you. And if y'all don't know as well, Lynette's as well as Derek are, the ones that are adding a lot of shorts and videos and audio of different birds that they're seeing and hearing onto our YouTube page. So definitely check that out. There's a lot of fun content like that on there too. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I'll just roll through these slides fairly quickly, but you know, if you joined us for the Ramble the last couple of years, you'll know that I was based previously in California on the west coast of the US, and just a few months ago, I moved up to Washington State, also on the west coast of the US, but in the Pacific Northwest region, so the northwesternmost part of the country. And there are a lot of different and unique habitats and environments that we have here, and they're just, it's incredible. You know, with the coastline on the western part of the state, we have really unique inland prairies that were formed with the glacier retreat, these really interesting glacial outwash soils. We have wetlands. We have one of the only temperate rainforests in the Olympic National Park that you can find in the world. Lots of alpine environments, and then shrub steppe on the eastern part of the state. So with all of that, there are over 500 bird species here, and you know, it's part of one of the major Pacific flyways as well. And I had mentioned that I wanted to talk more about some of the, you know, shorebirds and waterway birds that we can find here, but I wanted to just briefly mention some of the mountains and alpine habitats and the cool birds that you can find here. These are just some of my favorite places to spend my time in Washington. So especially in the summer once the snow melts, there's just a lot of hiking opportunities and chances to get out in nature and see lots of really cool birds. And we have a pretty wide diversity of corvids, for example, in the state. And once you get up into those alpine environments, you can find gray jays, Steller's jays, Clark's nutcrackers, as well as a myriad of other kinds of birds that are just behaviorally super interesting and are also really fun to watch. So this is the coastline of Washington that's looking out to the Olympic National Park and the mountains out that way. And as I mentioned, you know, with the waterways and rivers and marshes and wetlands all throughout the state, there's a lot of a variety of different birds. So in those kinds of environments, we'll find bald eagles, which I'll tell you about some of my favorite spots to spot them in the state. Marbled murrelets, which are a really interesting endangered bird here in the state. Their life history is really interesting because in the winter they'll spend much of their life on the ocean. They're, you know, seabirds, but for nesting they go inland and only nest in really old growth forests. So, you know, their needs for what they need year round are drastically different from a lot of other kinds of seabirds and water birds that we typically get to experience. And then Dunlin, these birds in the wintertime, especially if you do winter birding on the coast here in Washington, you'll see them in groups of just hundreds or thousands. And they do that really incredible murmuration behavior. And they're just incredible to be able to watch and experience in the wintertime. So it might be kind of cold and chilly and rainy this time of year here in the Pacific Northwest, but it does not hinder the birding opportunities, that's for sure. So there are a few of my favorite eagle spots in the state. If you're ever around in Washington and you're interested in being able to see these birds here, Rockport up just north in the northern part of the state, west of the North Cascades National Park, is on a river ecosystem, and you'll find dozens and dozens of eagles flying around the river there, scavenging and hunting for different fish and invertebrates that are washing up on the rivers there. Seabeck is a little coastal village that is tidal. So when the tide goes out, a lot of the fish and invertebrates and crustaceans and whatnot sometimes will get caught in that tidal zone where they don't end up going out with the rest of the tide. And so the eagles will come in and swoop in and forage there. And one of my most favorite places to bird in general in the area where I live and to see eagles is Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge. And what I love about this location for birding is that it has really, really diverse habitats to walk around and enjoy different birds. There are forests, ecosystems, there's marshlands, and then this is tidal too. So when the tide comes in, you'll see all sorts of shorebird or water birds, and some of the shorebirds with like longer legs kind of hanging out along these little edges, these little island edges, as well as even harbor seals and otters that end up coming in with the tide. And then when the tide goes out, these are almost like mud flats. And that's when a lot of the different shorebirds come in and start foraging, as well as the eagles. And just, a little fact about the bald eagles too. So they're found in a lot of Canada, throughout pretty much all of the US and into northern Mexico. And they were endangered, for a long time until we got more information about DDT, an insecticide or pesticide that was impacting their eggs and their nest survival. So after many years of research and conservation and everything like that, they were delisted in 2007, and now there's over 300,000 individuals in the wild. So they're thriving, they're doing really, really well, and that means that in a lot of parts of the states you're able to see them actually pretty easily. Which is really exciting. And they're just one of those birds where when you see them, they just take your breath away because they're huge and they're majestic. And so this is a video that I just took last weekend at Nisqually. You can see that big nest in the tree there. And bear with me, so it was really windy this day. I just had my phone and my binoculars on me, but I put my binoculars right up so you can see where that eagle is hanging out in the tree there, next to the marshlands. And what was cool, I did not get a video of it doing this, but after I saw it hanging out in the tree there, it flew down to some of the water, scared all of the waterfowl that was hanging out in the water, and started giving itself a bath. And it's just flapping its huge wings in the water and just got completely drenched and had to kind of shake itself off, which was really fun to see. I had never seen an eagle getting a bath before, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm really enjoying being back in Washington State and all the birding opportunities that we have here. So I'm looking forward to being able to share more of that with you. So Derek, I think it's on to you. And I know we're a couple minutes over 10 o'clock. So if anyone needs to jump off, we really appreciate you being here. We're going to continue to record the presentation. And if you have time to watch the end of it later on our YouTube channel, then we would love for you to do that.
So I'm going to go very quickly because we are past the time and I need to go get some food before 8:30. Otherwise I won't eat tonight. I'm going to start off with this little picture, which is a little sparrowhawk. And this was last weekend. And this is above my breakfast table. Where I live, we tend to do everything outdoors. So we have our table outside and we tend to eat breakfast underneath this tree. And the little sparrowhawk just came and sat there for like 20 minutes, just watching. But that's not what my little thing is about. I like to do these little trips, and I like to give myself some tasks to do on these trips rather than just go looking at birds. And I like to watch behavior. I like to learn new things about birds. And so I decided that this summer holiday, which is mid-December to early January, I was going to focus on tree cavity nesting birds and figure out, what their relationship is with tree ecology. And so that's what we set out to do. My wife's a great bird spotter, so she finds all the birds and I just take the pictures. So what are cavity nesters? They're birds that use holes in trees for nesting, like the gray-headed sparrow here. And by the way, all these pictures were taken on the trip. And they can be divided into two kinds. There's primary cavity nesters, birds that excavate or make the cavities in trees. There should be things like woodpeckers and barbets. And then there are secondary cavity nesters that use cavities that are excavated by other birds or abandoned or natural holes in trees. So this is what we set out to look for on the trip, and try and focus on and get as many observations and information as we could. And what sparked that interest was, in fact, elephants, because we have an overpopulation of elephants at the moment. And I live right next door to Kruger National Park, and Kruger National Park has got probably 3 or 4 times, maybe even more, what the carrying capacity of the park should be. So this impacts on the ecology of the trees. And here you can see an example of a tree that has been ring barked by one or more elephants, and that tree is not going to survive much longer. So what that leaves is snags initially, which is standing dead trees, but eventually those snags fall down, and then you have basically no trees, or only small trees and shrubs. And Kruger has seen about a 95% loss of top canopy trees since the 1950s. So what is the impact of all of that on birds that nest in cavities in trees? So this is one of my favorites, the woodland kingfisher. It comes every summer, and it nests in either a natural tree hole or an old woodpecker or barbet hole. And this is just an example of one of the tree hole nesters. So I set out to observe and photograph as many cavity nesters as I could, and also watch them and learn about them. And then I want to eventually put together a webinar on cavity nesters. So this is just the start, and this is the trip. Started out where I live in Hoedspruit. So we did 2 trips. The first one was 3 days. We went to Satara Rest Camp in Kruger National Park. And then we came back home, and we were back for a little bit less than a week. And then we headed out and we went down crossed into Eswatini, which used to be called Swaziland, which is a separate country, landlocked country that's landlocked between South Africa and Mozambique. And we stayed at Mbuluzi Game Reserve, which is absolutely a fantastic place for birds, but I'm not going to talk about that now. And then from there, we went down, and it doesn't show here, but we went down into South Africa and then back up again to this little corner here, or this green area here is called Ndumo. And it's also one of South Africa's birding hotspots, although it was not great this summer because it was pouring rain while we were there. And then from there, we went down, actually around the coast here and down to False Bay. And near the town of Sluislui. And again, there we were also still looking for cavity nesting birds, but also birds that live in the sand forest that's there. So that was the trip. And then we went back up again, back through Swaziland, and went through a border post called Belemu. And this roughly 28 kilometers between Pigs Peak and the Belemu border post is probably the worst road I've ever been on in my life. It was 28 kilometers, and it took 2.5 hours, just to give you an idea. And that's up at the top of the mountain. After we climbed up, it was probably 60% of the time in 4-wheel drive low range and very muddy, but a very beautiful place. And I'm glad we did it, because it was unexpected to see such amazing, stunning views. So back to the birds. So the first set of observations are actually from the backyard. This is outside my office window, and this is a golden-tailed woodpecker. And it's digging a hole in an old sisal log, which I've got tied to a tree there. And it looked like it was going to, nest in there. Both the male and the female were there, and they were nesting. And they were digging the hole for nesting. And but look who's up here looking down, Triagama, and in the other hole, the first hole that they dug. So now they're down here digging a second hole. So they dug this second hole, and guess who moved in? The female Triagama again. And so they abandoned their project, I guess, and went off to look for another spot to build their nest. And then, interestingly, tree hole nesters have some challenges of their own. This is a scaly-throated honey guide that came in one morning while I was having my coffee. I was just looking out the window, and there was this scaly-throated honey guide, and it's looking at the woodpecker holes. And I'm like, why is it looking at the woodpecker holes? And it came and started, going into the hole and having a good look around. But the woodpeckers were, of course, not there. And the scaly-throated honey guide is, of course, a parasite of woodpeckers and barbets. So that's what it was doing there. So you get to see some of the interesting interactions, And then this is now on the Kruger part of the trip, which mostly what I'm going to show you because I left my slides, other slides behind in Hoedspruit. I copied them all onto a portable hard drive, and then I left the hard drive behind. So this is a yellow-billed hornbill, and you can see that it's got a nest hole here. And the nest hole is filled in largely with mud and things, as these hornbills do. And we were wondering what it's bringing to the nest. So we just sat there for about an hour and maybe an hour and a half and just watched. And this is what we saw. The hornbills actually catching termites in the air and then flying back to the nest. And it's doing that probably one every 15 seconds. So catch a termite, fly to the nest, feed the young, go back out, catch another one. And both the male and the female were busy. So the female had already left the nest. So that's another example of a cavity nester. And this is probably my favorite cavity nester. And that's a southern ground hornbill, which is a massive, large hornbill. And in the Satara area, we were just driving, and Esther said, there's a big black bird over there. And I thought, well, okay, let's look. And as we drove around and came back up on a different road, they flew in, and they were all around this dead tree. This is the last remains of a snag. And then we saw that they were actually flying back and forth between two of these snags. They had another one that was about 100 meters away from this one, and they were checking both of them out. And it was quite fascinating to watch them. These hornbills typically work in groups of 4 or so to pick a nest, and then the main male and the female are the ones that mate and create the next generation, the female laying the eggs inside this cavity. The other two are helpers. And it's interesting that these birds don't do a very good job of breeding unless they've spent some time being a helper for a successfully breeding pair. So they were all around this log, checking it out, digging, tearing out little bits of wood and throwing it on the ground, just trying to figure out if they could make a nice hole. And then, of course, the termites were out that day as well. And it's amazing to see these really large birds running across the ground and catching termites. And I thought that they might have young in the nest, but they hadn't actually built the nest yet. And this one caught a frog and actually carried the frog up to that log and then put it down. And I don't know what it was doing. It didn't eat it. There was no young in the hole, but maybe it was practicing. So this is another interesting example of a cavity nester. And one of the interesting things about the relationship with the elephants and the big trees is that these birds need really large trees in order to successfully nest. So there must be some impact of the large population of elephants on this species of bird. And then while we're on hornbills, we also had trumpeter hornbill. Sorry, my brain just went blank. We had trumpeter hornbills. This was in my backyard, actually, but we had them in Swaziland, and we managed to get some observations and a few pictures of their nesting site as well. Unfortunately, I left those pictures behind. So this is one that was also on one of the trees just above the breakfast table the other morning. And they are also quite amazing birds, and they do build these elaborate sealed nests in large trees, and they probably, I would imagine, would also be another species that would be impacted by the destruction of large trees by elephants. So this is just a little taste of some of the cavity nesting birds and the things that we can learn about the biology of these birds when we go and do these little birding excursions. And I hope that over the next year or so, I will continue developing some images and also reading some of the research papers on cavity nesting birds and be able to make a presentation on Learn the Birds in the next 12 months or so. So that's it from me. And I'm sorry we've gone so much over the time.
Krista, over to you to do the wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, for that presentation. I always love all of the stories and sightings that you end up having in your area. It's just incredible, and all the travels that you have. Yeah, so thanks so much, everybody, for being here today too. And yeah, I know that we've gone a little bit over. I feel like this happens almost every year now too. When we do our rambles, we end up, chatting about all these fun bird locations and whatnot. And just want to share everything with you. So we really appreciate you joining us for that. And we wanted to also just, let you know sort of a little bit of information about the future of Learn the Birds and sort of the direction that we're heading in. If you have been to our website at all recently, you might have seen that there are some changes on there. We've removed at this point a whole bunch of different content that we used to have on there, because it's just a handful of us that are, sort of managing a lot of the content and getting speakers together and everything like that. We're really just honing in our time on looking at having speakers come on and providing webinars for you every month. So if you are somebody who's interested in doing a webinar with us, we'd love to hear from you. And if you are also interested in working with Learn the Birds and helping us out with outreach or other kinds of things like that, then we would love to hear from you. I'll put our email address also in the chat, and of course you get our emails to attend webinars like this one. And everything that we do is completely on our own time. So if you are able to contribute any of your time or any small contributions, we greatly appreciate that. We're just so glad to be in this Learn the Birds community with you and in the birding community with you in general. Let's see. So I think as far as other changes go, we don't have courses up at this time right now, but that might be something that changes in the future if we have more capacity or more time. But right now we're mostly going to be sticking with webinars and also putting new content and videos and whatnot on our YouTube channel. So keep checking back there. We'd love to see you every month for our different webinars. And yeah, if you have any questions about that, we would love to hear from you, and would love to see you next month at our upcoming webinar, which we have planned. I think we have webinars now planned through March, and then we'll be posting up webinars also for April here soon. Are there, and I didn't see any specific questions. I did see there during your presentation, Derek, there were a couple of questions about, or comments about the elephant populations, which I thought was also really interesting. So maybe that's something we can cover at some point in the future. Mix it with sort of the bird habitat dynamics and talk about that a little bit. But otherwise, I didn't see any other specific questions. So if you have any, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, definitely email us with any questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, birding related things, fun things that you experienced. Thanks, Mary Lee. Yeah, so this is the first time we're using Google Meets. It seems like it's okay if we can kind of troubleshoot some of the tech stuff and the sharing, of the screens that gets a little bit wonky sometimes. It seems like it'll work okay. Thank you, everyone. So glad. Oh, yeah, if you could send us a speaker suggestion, we would love to hear about that for sure. We're always looking for new for new webinar speakers. We're still going to stick with about once a month just because the amount of time it takes to kind of get everything together for webinars is quite a bit, but sometimes we're able to double it up, especially like in March for International Women's Month. Did you have anything to add to that, Derek or Lynette?
Yeah, we actually need 2 more speakers for Women's Month in March. We've got 2, we need 2 more. So if there are any lady speakers, please contact us.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Lynette.
I see 2 people have volunteered various things, so I've copied it into our group chat, our more persistent chat.
Oh, that's great. We need help. If you can find guest speakers, or if you've got anyone in mind that could give an interesting talk, please contact us as well.
Yeah, and as you've seen, some of the presentations, that others have shared during our webinar series are, birding destinations and their location or on a trip they went on. So, we have a lot of, scholars and professionals that come on to talk about their research, but a lot of people are also really interested in, learning more about different regions of the world and the kinds of birds there and where to go birding and how to do that. So if that's something that you are really interested in, then oh yeah, Caroline, white storks in The Hague, for sure. The white storks are so interesting. All the different platforms that are, even throughout Europe are, that's incredible being able to provide that nesting habitat for them too. I'd love to hear more about your research.
David, we didn't really remove content. We removed functionality that we were not using that was costing us money and costing us maintenance time. Like the e-learning application, for example, that we had set up. We had the idea that we would be able to do master classes and things like that. And it just proved to be impossible for a small group of people who also have day jobs. So, yeah. All right. Goodbye, everybody. And thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's good to see you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us, Oscar.